Hello everyone. Welcome to Global Compliance Panel's live webinar on medical device design control. My name is Johnson and I'm going to be your host today. On behalf of the Global Compliance Panel team, I would like to thank you for being a part of today's event. Today's webinar will be presented by Dr. David Lim. Dr. Lim obtained his PhD in Biological Sciences at the University of Missouri, Columbia, and published his thesis research in the prestigious journal Science. Since then, Dr. Lim has held various positions at Duke, U.S. National Laboratories, Interexon Corporation, Chromo, U.S. FDA/CDRH, and Eragen Biosciences Inc., a Luminex company. In 2009, Dr. Lim served as a member during the FDA's Transparency Public Meeting. Prior to founding his own consulting firm, which is Regulatory Doctor, Dr. Lim was Senior Vice President of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at the Aquavit Pharmaceuticals Inc. in New York, wherein Dr. Lim provided inspiring and actionable solutions for sustainable business operation. Dr. Lim, as Regulatory Doctor, provides practical, actionable, and strategic solutions integrated with emotional intelligence, EQ skills for all aspects of global regulatory, quality, clinical, and compliance matters. Over the years, Dr. Lim has analyzed over 1,000 FDA warning letters. Dr. Lim has also attended more than 50 FDA advisory panel meetings and analyzed the subject matters and decision-making processes in detail. Dr. Lim is familiar with more than 200 medical products, medical devices including IVD products, biologics, drugs, and combination products. Dr. Lim is a certified professional for regulatory affairs and also a certified quality auditor with the American Society of Quality. Dr. Lim is an auditor, regulatory coach, consultant, and instructor for global matters pertaining to regulatory affairs and compliance, quality, and clinical affairs. We are honored to have such a distinguished person such as David Lim with us to present the webinar. Before we begin, I would like to inform that the program outlined for today's training session. This webinar is for 60 minutes duration. First, Dr. Lim will take you through today's webinar, highlighting the areas that would be covered, and he would then share with you his presentation. We'd like to inform all participants once part of the teleconference has been placed on mute and will remain so until the Q&A begins towards the end of the webinar. The Q&A window is allotted 10 minutes of time towards the end of the session. Now, in case any of you get logged out of this training session or teleconference, please follow the same procedure to join in again. Now that we are ready to start, I request Dr. Lim to take it forward from here.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Lim?
Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to today's live webinar. This is David Lim. Today, we are going to dive into medical device design control. This is general disclaimer for your own review when you get a chance. Today's webinar scope, it is intended to help you get familiar with design control as part of current good manufacturing practice, CGMP for medical devices and IVDs. In fact, CGMP, this is old term. Now we use quality system regulations. So this webinar, it is further intended to provide guidance in particular on the design control requirement as part of quality system regulations, Title 21 Code of Federal Regulations, CFR Part 820. So as you can see, this CFR Part 820, it is to ensure that medical devices are safe and effective for their intended use. This is an interesting term we are all familiar with, but I get a question often that we are developing devices, but for research use only, are we still subject to 21 CFR Part 820? Obviously not. Look at the language here. It has to be a medical device. It has to be for human use. So if you are developing device just for research use only, you're not subject to 21 CFR Part 820. However, if you want to voluntarily comply with 21 CFR Part 820, that is a different story. So today we are going to discuss all the areas that are listed here in this slide. So now the QSR, going back to QSR quality system regulation. In fact, the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act, FDNC Act, or the Act, in particular, Section 520, that covers CGMP and is implemented in the 21 CFR Part 820 federal regulation. It was effective as of June 1st, 1997. And then for design control, it was 1 year after, for example, June 1st, 1998. According to this requirement, the medical device manufacturers, they are required to have the all the various specification controls be established for their device types, and their devices be designed on the quality system to meet their specification. And also devices be manufactured under quality systems, and device be correctly installed, checked and serviced, and data be analyzed, and complaints be processed. So now it's getting clear. Well, why do I introduce this old date? Well, the reason that I introduce old date is because in that document, there is a preamble where you may want to visit and try to read the preamble so that you will understand better and behind the scene per se why FDA choose the requirement the way they do. So it will be very helpful for your understanding. So in the U.S., just to simply demonstrate the Code of Federal Regulation, what does it mean? In the U.S. government, there are three branches: executive, judicial, and legislative branch. And U.S. Congress makes laws. We know that United States President is the head of the executive branch of the government. And the executive branch, actually, they are the one who implement the laws and makes regulations based on the laws. So therefore, the regulations are not technically laws, but not really laws. United States Code and FDNC Act, they are the real laws. But the regulations actually implement such laws. So today's our focus is design control. That's what we are going to hammer on. So as part of quality system regulation, we just looked at some of the subpart as under Part 820, and then subparts are continued in this slide. In particular, subpart M, under record, there is a device master record and device history record and complaint files. So to make a big point here, when we talk about quality system regulations, it is the regulations that implement the laws, but there is a flexibility. And I've seen some professionals that some of them are pretty anal about the language, but the quality system regulation itself is flexible. Where do we find and identify that is flexible? Well, that's on the 21 CFR Section 820.5. It defines each manufacturer shall establish, maintain quality system that is just appropriate, for the specific device type. So you may have class 1 device, you may have class 2 device only, you may have class 1, 2, 3, all different classes of devices. Depending upon what kind of devices that you manufacture, your compliance to 21 CFR Part 820 may differ. So please take advantage of that. So what I'm trying to say is that it is left to you as a device manufacturer for you to determine the necessity or the level of extent for your quality elements to implement. So it is up to you. So flexibility of quality system regulation QSR is continuous. So if you read the regulations, it generally specifies objectives, and rather than specific method and procedures. So when you look at ISO 13485, it also specifies general objectives. Question is, I get a lot of questions between 21 CFR Part 820 and ISO 13485. What is the differences, and isn't it the same? And if we comply with ISO 13485, doesn't it necessarily mean that we also comply with 21 CFR Part 820? Well, there is a differences. Even though there is a general objective, the depth and severity of FDA's expectation compared to ISO 13485 is different. So now I made this point that the under 21 CFR Part 820, it describes general objectives, and it is the manufacturer who should fill in the gaps. So as you manufacture and your organization size grows, and then you have to come up with the adequate procedures and steps and changes so that you continue to meet the requirements. So basically, that can be achieved through your change control or day-to-day observance of your operation and periodic audits of your system. So quality management system, QMS, I am referring to 21 CFR Part 820. So ISO 13485 is not the scope of our discussion today. So even for 21 CFR Part 820 QMS, it should be commensurate with your specific device type and should be tailored to your particular process, manufacturing, and devices. For example, if you're manufacturing Class 2 device only, it is so burdensome, it is not necessary to have the same quality management system for the Class 3 device type. And when you implement QMS on the 21 CFR Part 820, you want to also consider your organization size and complexity. So now let's look at definition. Quality, we talk about quality. Now a lot of industry professionals say that, well, it's all about how to meet the customer or how to keep the customer happy and how to meet the customer satisfaction. Well, according to on the 21 CFR Part 820, it is the totality of all of your device features and characteristics that satisfy fitness for use, including safety and performance. And the term established, if we want to say established, it means we should be able to show a document that shows the definition of some key terms and documentation, whether it's in writing or electronically or both, and implement. And when we use implement, your document has to show that the date of signature or effective date and the person's signature, whether it's electronically done or actual signature. And some companies shows we have established procedure, and when you look at it, there's no date, no signature, anything. It's all blank. Well, then you don't use the term we have implemented. So we have to interpret each term accurately. Design history file, DHF, the compilation of record that describe all the design history of your finished device. And design input, I think that this is intuitive for you to read. Well, design output. When you talk about design output, we have to come up with one key term, acceptance criteria. And also design output is the basis of device master record, DMR. So basically, you have design input, and then output is the results of all of your design effort at each design phase, and at the end of total design effort. So you should have a procedure for design output and the documentation. And design review and device history record is a compilation of record containing production history. Basically, all of your lots and batches What if you have to recall and some batches, and then you have tested some batches, recover from the failure, and you have some the data based on your testing. All those testing must be part of device history record as well. Device master record and management with executive responsibility, and look at the definition. The consultants are a temporary employee providing consulting advice to the management, and therefore you don't put a consultant as management with executive responsibility. And I got 2 times of the question, why not the consultant? Well, based on this document, based on the definition under 21 CFR 820, that violates the term. So now, finished device. The finished device, basically, look at the definition. Any device or accessory to any device suitable for use or capable of functioning. When you look at the preamble that I referred to you, you will see the terminology of this one. Industry objected to the definition of finished device because it is so vague and it is so confusing and it is so broad. However, FDA thought that this is adequate. As long as your device prototype, whatever, is suitable for use and or capable of functioning, then it's a finished device, whether or not it's packaged, labeled, or sterilized. Manufacturer, the under 21 CFR, as for quality management system is concerned, manufacturer is defined, it's very broad. And specification. Specification generally is a requirement, but it, generally speaking, it refers to your documentation. For example, software requirement specification, SRS, product requirement specification. So like that. So now I'd like to briefly talk about the Challenger. Well, this is a tragic event that happened many years ago. In the history, the 2 major events manifesting design failures, arguably speaking, by the way, of course, that I can mention as example for demonstration purposes. One is Titanic, and the second is Challenger Space Shuttle. The Space Shuttle Challenger was launched on January 28, 1986. I have a very critical date in my life, this date, so I remember easy. It was NASA's second orbiter, actually. The Columbia was the first, we all know that, but the flight lasted only 73 seconds. The spacecraft crumbled over the Atlantic Ocean, and it killed all 7 crew members and disintegrated. In fact, there is a supplier called Tyco. That was the manufacturer who provided solid rocket booster for Challenger. And well, after this tragic event, they only paid $10 million compensation to NASA. Why am I talking about this? Well, the oil seal ring in the right solid rocket booster failed during the liftoff, which made a hole in the solid rocket booster joint, allow hot gases to escape from the motor to the nearby hardware and then fuel tank, and then that was it. So estimate cost was 7 billion last year. Because of one simple O-ring design failures. What I'm trying to say, not to scare you, by the way, is that design control, it is very important. And to exaggerate a little bit, I say design failure is equivalent to say that it is the kiss of death of a product or products. So this design control application, actually a waterfall design process, this came from the Health Canada originally, but FDA uses it. So waterfall design process can be applied for design control, including software as well. And this waterfall design process can be divided into separate phases, as shown in this slide. User need, design input, and then process, design output, and medical device. So each step is sort of separated, so it's clear. And when you look at it here, design output and design input. So basically, the process called verification. It means that to confirm the design output meet the design input requirement. That's verification. In layman's term, are we making our product in a right way? So that's the layman's stuff. Please look at the here, medical device. This is the medical device, finished device, suitable for use or capable of functioning. Using that device, you do validation. Validation is to make sure all of the required specification meet the intended user need. That's the validation. Question: do we have to do our validation using finished device? Absolutely. Question is, how do you define a finished device? Well, if you say we only have a prototype and this is just the very early stage of your device, question is your prototype suitable for use? Is your prototype capable of functioning? If you say yes, then your validation should be using that prototype that you can call it as finished device. So verification and validation is a very different term. Now we are talking about design verification. And sometimes when inspector come and talk to the engineers, and then inspector asks, how do you know your design is verified? Well, then the engineers may answer, well, we have the data from product, manufacturing test, production test. Guess what? That's totally different. Design verification, it means you are trying to confirm the design output meet the design input requirement. But during manufacturing process, from your production test, you are testing whether your product that you manufacture are manufactured accurately that meets all the specifications. So it's a different process. Let's not get confused. So now management responsibility. We are talking about design control. Why are we talking about management responsibility? It is very interconnected. And so I just like to give you for you to read. Since it's straightforward. And as part of design control, the quality audit is also very related to design control. So I wanted to mention one thing. In quality audit, you use a lot of the materials, your document for audit, and then produce audit report. A lot of company, some people may feel fearful about leaving the report in case FDA inspector come and look at their internal audit report and realize that you knew all the things, but you never did anything properly. Well, please be aware that FDA inspectors are eligible and they are entitled to look at all the documents used for during your internal audit. However, your internal audit report, that's a confidential documents. They are not subject to requesting such report. It is your own confidential documents. But all the report and documents used during your internal audit report are subject to the FDA's request. Now, personnel training also is important. Now, during design control implementation and policies and procedures should be considered, and I have listed some of this, because the design control itself is not about just controlling just the design. There are many elements are interrelated and connected, and therefore I wanted to bring those issues. For example, risk management. FEMA, there is a design FEMA, process FEMA, system FEMA, poetry analysis, basically risk management tools. In fact, even risk management is from ISO 14971 in the US. The difference between ISO 13485 with FDA is that even though FDA recognized ISO 14971, is that at FDA they use risk analysis. But the risk management, it is the term used under ISO standard. And use of standard FDA recognized or non-recognized device durability, reliability, and human factor testing, and all the things that are listed here. Human factors. Some companies miss human factors, and then you realize that you are required to do some human factors, and then after you submit your clinical trial submission, for example, IDE, investigational device exemption, you realize that that's required, and then the FDA requests such, and you have to do all over. It'll take a lot of time to get it done. So now let's really look at design control. That's under 29 CFR section 820.30. So when we interpret this, I think I like to share how I interpret. Design control requirements are not intended to apply to you during concept phase and feasibility studies. So that's the requirement. Some people ask, we are currently doing some feasibility testing. Are we subject to design control? No, you do not have to. However, if you voluntarily want to comply with it, again, that's a different story. Design control during investigational device exemption clinical trial phase, you are exempt from good manufacturing practice requirements except design control. During clinical trial, you are still subject to design control. So now design and development planning. So I listed some of the key activities here. And please look at the term, the plan and planning. Sometimes we talk about plan, sometimes we talk about planning. Well, plan is rather static. Planning is a dynamic. You just continue changing it. However, when you have a design plan, you have to follow it. We all know that. But during early in the process, you want to ask all these things that are listed here. But I want to make sure one thing here, suppliers. When is the best time to have supplier assigned or supplier identified? The sooner the better. I am not trying to say that you enter into a contractual relationship with a supplier during design phase or early phase. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to identify potential suppliers during early in the process so that you can qualify them on time to make sure that all of your activities are in alignment with your business goals and your development. That includes suppliers. So answer should be the sooner the better and earlier in the process. So during design phase process, you want to identify all these. So now to perform the key activities that we talk about, what would be required? Well, basically you should have a plan, you should define responsibilities, and regarding design and development planning, the regulation specifies that plans shall identify and describe the interfaces with different groups and activities. So you have to do that. So when you develop your procedure should lay out all this one. And during the design concept phase, you want to ask these key questions. These key questions is very important to design input development. I had a chance to talk to a CEO of a small company. That CEO, she claims she has over 25 years experience in medical device industry here in the U.S. Then I was asking, what is your device to be used for, or what is the intended use? Her answer was, well, our device can be used by anyone, and we don't have to have any intended use. Well, that's not the way you approach it, right? Anyway, we have to ask, what is the real need for our device? Who will use the device? What are the particular or patient population or user, and how will our new device be used, and where will it be used, and how long will the new device be used? All these key questions you need to address this so that you can develop compelling design input requirements. Now, design input, what is it? Well, in your procedure, you want to make sure or how you are going to ensure all the requirements are appropriate and address intended use. Now, if you don't have intended use, how are you going to develop design input? And during design input phase, you want to make sure you address incomplete, ambiguous, or conflicting requirements. So you have to address it. Now, what if you didn't address it, and then this can be cited as part of way 3 and could potentially lead to warning letter. And in your procedure, you have to document, review, and approve. And I like to say that these 3 words must be present, must be connected all the time. Document, review, approve. Document, review, approve. And the design input. So all of your device requirements should identify all of the performance, physical safety, and all the things, including the packaging, manufacturing, installation, maintenance, and all the other things. What I'm trying to say is that your final device specification should cover all of the device characteristics. Just to quickly say one thing, that for 510K submission purposes, you don't submit device design input procedures and all that. But for PMA, you provide the protocols. So now let's talk about design input. And this is the examples of potentially relevant aspects for your design input consideration. For example, you want to talk about, you want to have intended use, user-patient clinical interfaces, or performance characteristics, and the safety performance parameters, toxicity, biocompatibility, and many other features. So let me give you design input practical example. Let's say customer requirements. Regarding customer requirements, your customers in a hospital or wherever, they need some features of your device. For example, I want your device can be used on small and big human. I am small, my husband is big, and your device should be able to be used by both small and big. Now, you know that that's the customer requirement. Now, you came back to your company and you think about what they are requesting to you, and you develop your own system requirements. Wait a minute, customer is saying small and big, and you are going to measure the customer requirement, and then you come up with, well, let's target 95% of potential patients for those people in the US, 95%. So that's your internal requirement. Now, in design input requirement, what would that be if that's the condition? For example, customer wants your device to be used by small and large, big people, and then you want to cover 95% of domestic population or patients. Then in your device input requirement should be, well, standard size, standard small size, or standard medium size, and large size like that. Well, I can go on many examples, but the point is, when you develop design input, consider emerging risk as well. Now, design input, design output. Well, you should establish a procedure, and in your procedure, you should define and document design output, especially in terms of using percentage or the size, so that you demonstrate conformance to design input requirement. So now let me give you one practical example for design output requirement. Let's say design input, it was, well, device should be used in a hospital room, let's say emergency room, and it should be able to withstand adverse conditions. For example, in an emergency room, patient may pull your device. You want to develop a device, let's say tubing. You want to develop a tubing that withstand the patient's pulling, for example, accidental pulling. And your design output, if that's the design input, your design output should be, well, to prevent accidental pulling by the patient, the bond strength between the tubing and a lower lock has to be able to withstand maybe 5 or 10 pounds of axial force without detaching from the tubing. So you now try to put numbers like 10 pounds of axial force so that the bond strength can withstand that weight. For your DMR, the raw material for the lower lock, for example, will be AA or AA, just the name of the raw material, and then the solvent to use as the bonding material is named BB or CC. So those are the part of device master record. Well, what I'm trying to say is that before inserting the tubing into the lower lock, the solvent will be applied, and a curing of 5 minutes, 10 minutes will be allowed. Those procedures should be part of device master record. But anyway, in design output, you know what I'm saying, but you want to make sure acceptance criteria during design output stage. You are not going to change acceptance criteria after design transfer and later for the purposes of passing what you manufacture. You have to make sure the acceptance criteria be established prior to design transfer. But how do you do that? Well, you need to do a lot of testing before to make sure what is acceptable and like that. And as design output document, again, document review and approve, document review and approve. Now, design review. Design review, I want to make sure that review is a comprehensive and systematic. Even in a big company, $3 billion or some billion-dollar company, there is a designer, and he or she is the one who review and sign off. Well, you want to make sure that if there is a potential problems or design issues, you want to identify during the review process. So independent individuals should participate in formal design review, and this individual could be your employee, could be consultant, but at least should not have direct responsibility for the design phase. So that's important. And also, all of the methods for design review should be recorded on the design history file. For example, date and well, you have to identify what design you're talking about, and then date, individual who review, and action items. Imagine that under that documentation, the same person is the designer, review, and then sign off. That raises a red flag. Now, design verification, we talk about that. Design verification is part of design control, should be documented under design history file, DHF. So now let me talk about what kind of testing constitute design verification. Well, there are a lot of testing that can be referred as part of design verification. Again, to make sure design verification, it means, are we making a product in a right way, and you are trying to confirm that design output requirement meets the design input requirement. And we saw the waterfall design process. So basically, here's these are the testing. So design verification is conducted all stages, and some levels of design testing may differ, but it's a three-pronged approach. For example, you test it, you inspect it, and analyze it. So anything that relates to it can be part of your design verification, especially what I am listed here. So now let's talk about design history file. We talk about that the design verification activity should be documented as part of design history file. And now the examples. For example, your design plan should be part of DHF. Review meeting information, and a lot of people just think about the formal documentation. No, if you are a manager, quality manager, or R&D manager, if you send out your email giving some of the information what you are going to review and who will be signed off, on what time or on the what agenda, if you have such email, you have to dump that email into your folder and document it. For example, review meeting information. DHF also include your sketches, drawings, procedural photos, and all the things. And so, however, I like to say that some design output belong in the DHF as well. For example, what I'm trying to say is that the device master record (DMR) overlap with some of the document from design history file. For example, device description, labeling for the device, accessories, or shipping containers, user manual, service manual, testing specification, manufacturing materials, and specific procedures. Those are the items that are overlap between design history file and device master record. So design validation, we talk about the validation using the final device suitable for use or capable of functioning. You are trying to confirm it meets the intended use and user need. Basically, you have to document all this, and then in your validation, risk analysis should be done. And people say that, oh, we have completed validation, all that. Oh, can I see your risk analysis document? Or we don't have it yet. We haven't done it. Well, risk analysis is a very critical activity during design validation. And you should produce and document the risk analysis. As I said, risk analysis is used in the regulation, and we talk about in the U.S. Now, design transfer. Design transfer procedure should explain how you are going to conduct final review and approval of design and development activities. And also the design transfer, you should describe what design documents comprise device master record. And also you can include all of this. I had a chance to talk to a engineer in a big company, and she was doing design transfer, big activities, and I was asking, do you also include the training and others? And her answer was, we are about to include. But just to say that, each company in the design transfer activities a little different, but I recommend you put this. Now let's talk about device history record. We talk about device history record, all the batches and lots and things like that. For example, in that document, you have to have dates of manufacture, how many you have manufactured, and quantity released for distribution, acceptance record, and basically primary identification and label used for your production and control numbers. But after you recall or after receiving some complaint, if you have tested some of the lots, and those test data report should be part of device history record. That's frequently missed by companies. Device master record, it's intuitive. Basically, device specification and procedures. Compilation of device specification and procedures. That include all of these. For example, labeling, packaging, control procedure activities, your sterilization, if applicable, and final release form, document review, and things should be part of device master record. So now to document this, it may sound and look very burdensome, but you can simply refer to it. You can generate a simple several pages of document and then refer to the location. I was in a device master record history file and the device history record file one sentence. The following document should be part of it, and there was nothing written below it. And when I talked to the QA manager, her answer was, "Oh, we have the electronic system. Everything is there. We don't have to specifically mention it." You are not going to give that answer to the FDA inspectors, right? I recommend you generate a couple of pages and identify what documents falls under your design history file, device history record, and device master record, and refer to it, just like shown in this slide. Now, design changes, and your change. Some company have one protocol, and some company have two procedures during pre-marketing and then post-marketing. Whatever procedure you have, you want to make sure that your procedure describes when and how you use change control, even during original design process, and even after marketing, and describe when you use verification for certain design changes instead of validation. Some people have fixed minds saying, when there is a validation, it must be validation as well. But when there is a verification, it must be validation as well, like V and B. No, sometimes you just have to do verification. Sometimes you have to do verification and validation. But when you do only verification, you want to justify why you are doing verification only, not validation. And also, if you have the list of things that you are doing just verification only, then you have to document such and with justification why you are choosing verification rather than validation of a design change. And also, your procedure should explain how you are going to ensure the changes are validated or verified, review and approved before your change is implemented. Now, quality system procedure, this is just a general, in your quality management system procedure, you want to include all this, and then in the outline, you want to put title and scope and the revision history. Sometimes some company put revision history on the cover page, or you can put at the end, and it's up to you, and table of content and definition. I've seen a lot of quality policy or quality manual not having table of content, but table of content is your face, and you are showing the map, road map for the document. So I highly recommend you include table of content and definition and outline, and then other things, especially if you have a lot of documents that you relate to, but then you want to put some guide or appendix. But I want to make sure that this quality system manual, it is your high-level document. You don't want to put so much details on it. It is high-level documents. So now let's talk about enforcement actions. Case 1, for example, May 9, 2012, company received a warning letter stating design history file. So basically, the company, they had no report in the design history file, and also there's no indication that the validation protocols were followed. And then another case is that the process shall be, well, if you read the regulation, for example, this is process validation, which is outside the design control 21 CFR section 820.30. But some of I'm trying to talk about the acceptance criteria, that acceptance criteria should be established only, not during the testing. And now let's talk about design output in terms. So basically, in your procedure, design output procedure, you should have some terms that allows an adequate evaluation of your conformance with the design input requirement, and we talk about the numbers. For example, let's say in your final release specification, you say 10%, and then in your packaging, so you say 20%. So there is a discrepancy, and the FDA cited failure to establish and maintain adequate procedure for design output. Now, here's the DMR and DHR. For example, I stated that if you have received some complaint and you've done some testing, and those test results should be documented. And so the company didn't do that, and they got cited in the warning letter. So now, based on all this, what lesson have we learned, and what I like to recommend? Well, in implementing design control, you need to consider your business context. What I'm saying, context means your size of your organization and complexity and your device type. And science and data driven rather than emotion and gut feelings, and it should be risk-based. When I say risk, it has to be documented and justifiable risk-based, not just our assumption-based risk. has to be justifiable and documented. And I realized that especially during design control, it's very critical we communicate, and our communication should be transparent, and we should be accountable. And we have to understand good manufacturing practice, general requirement, design control requirement, and also the even though you are manufacturing class 3 device or class 1 device, and you have some flexibility to implement design control and address all the applicable relevant requirement in your procedure, for example, design input, output review, and verification and validation activities. And we need to ensure the procedures are established and followed, and all the requirements are met. And also we have to document. When we have documents, not just document has to be adequate, meeting all the requirements, and compliance has to be sustainable, not just one time. And while we do all this, I recommend keep it simple and sustainable, integrated thorough matter. That's what KISS means. Well, PASSIT is just my promo term that regulatory doctor provide practical, actionable, and sustainable solutions in an integrated thorough matter. So with this, this concludes my webinar presentation. To open Q&A session, I'd like to hand over the mic to today's webinar host, Global Compliance Panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lim, for the wonderful presentation. And also thank all our participants for patiently listening to us. It's time now for the Q&A session to begin. I shall go ahead and open up your lines. If you do have any questions, please click on the raise hand option, which is a palm-like icon on the participants panel. And I can unmute your lines and you can ask your questions directly to Dr. Lim. You can also go ahead and post your questions on the Q&A panel, or you can use the chat panel and post it on my chat box, and I can pass it on to our presenter who can read it out loud and answer the questions. Now, in the meanwhile, we have a feedback form which has about 8 questions, mostly multiple choice in nature. This form will appear on your polling panel right now. Would request you to go ahead and give your feedback to us because it's of utmost importance. The feedback form will be open till the end of the session. Now it's time for the Q&A to begin. So in case you do have any questions, please do feel free to post them on my chat panel or click on the raise hand option. Okay, Dr. Lim, we do have a couple of questions. Can I go ahead and post it on your chat panel?
Sure.
Yeah, that's coming up right now. It should be on your chat panel now.
Well, this is a very important and practical question. Is there a need to document acceptance criteria in design and development plan or design input? Well, I like to say in an interesting way, some of you may agree or may disagree, but simple answer is no need, as long as you ensure you put acceptance criteria in your design output document. But if you just want to put, then you can put. But the term need, well, what I've learned from the term need, people heavily use it. I need to do this. We need to do this. We need to do this, and everywhere. But the term need is an absolute requirement. For example, when I want to have a bicycle, I may say I want to have a bicycle. I just want it. But if I say I need to have my bicycle, then means that is a requirement that I must have it. So when we say the need, the way I interpret that, are we required by regulation or by law that we have to do this? So that's how I interpret. But this is a great question. But as I said, no, I think that we just want to make sure that acceptance criteria be included in the design output. But in case if you want to voluntarily include in other document, I recommend you want to make sure the acceptance criteria are absolutely consistent, the same basically.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. I've just posted another question on your chat panel.
The IT integrated and thorough matter, integrated, thorough.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lim. We are still waiting for some more questions to come. While we are waiting for more questions to come, I would like to inform all our participants that in case any of your team members, colleagues, friends might benefit from this webinar, we are happy to inform you that it would be available in a recorded format, and it can be purchased from our website, or you can call us at 1-800-447-9407. We do also have a library of the past webinars that Dr. Lim has conducted. Okay. Just looking if there are any more questions. Yes, I do see one more question which has come up. That's coming up on your screen right now, Dr. Lim.
Well, this is also a practical question. As long as your document, you can refer to it, that's acceptable. But I want to make sure that if you're manufacturing class 3 device, or if you have to, or intending to submit your PMA, in that document, you are going to submit design, design document, for example, design output, procedures, and any report. Now, in your design output procedure, if you refer to it, then you are going to be asked to provide the document that that has design output. So, and also during your FDA inspection procedure, if you have the acceptance criteria in another document, you want to make sure that all of your employees understand and realize that that is the case. So I think that you can refer to it, but for making your process, well, technically for making your life a little easier, you may want to put in acceptance criteria in your design output document, because that's the regulatory requirement to be included. But you can refer to it, but I recommend you actually write it and also refer to it if that's also possible.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. Well, Dr. Lim, I don't see any more questions coming up. Any parting words, thoughts from your end before I wrap up today's session?
Well, again, thank you very much for attending today's webinar, and I personally and professionally believe the design control is very important. And recently, I am still reviewing a lot of recall and FDA database, and realizing that design control actually is somewhat being ignored. But I highly recommend that you use the information that we shared today. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact Global Compliance Panel, and then I'll answer any question very quickly. Again, thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lim. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful to all of you for having taken part in this webinar. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can send us an email to webinars@globalcompliancepanel.com. We welcome your suggestions and feedback or ideas on how we can improve our webinars. If you'd like to suggest a topic or desire a customized corporate training program, online or on-site, we ensure whatever your training necessity is, it would be our priority. We look forward to having you with us again sometime soon, and for your continued patronage. On behalf of our presenter, Dr. David Lim, and the Global Compliance Panel team, I would like to say thank you for participating in today's webinar, and we wish you a pleasant day ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lim.
Thank you.